Well, good evening. Here we go. So I'm going to call to order our council meeting for Tuesday, April the 7th. Welcome, everybody. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? And seeing none. Okay, so like the special council meeting that we had a couple weeks ago, this looks a little different, and it's really hard to believe that it was just 3 weeks ago when we last met in person. And in many ways, it seems like that was a lifetime ago. Adaptations to the situation had to happen quickly, and we now find ourselves in a routine. And I want to congratulate all our residents, employers, our children, and our municipal staff who have adapted so quickly to the situation we are in front of us. It would seem today that we will not be out of this anytime soon. And I want to remind and reinforce with our residents the need to continue to practice physical distancing. As you've heard and will continue to hear, we all have a role to play. Think of it as a call to service. How you, I, all of us react today will determine how quickly our community fares. Days like the last few are a challenge for us. We want to get out and socialize. I would caution all of you and ask that you bear down and adhere to these strict restrictions. With a holiday upon us, take advantage of technology and be creative as you celebrate Easter, Passover, or begin to prepare for Ramadan, or just take the time to celebrate family. I will continue to ask you to watch out for your neighbors. Check in with those that may not have the support system that you do. We have vulnerable people in our community, and if you know of someone in need, please reach out to them. Or if there is a pressing need, let us know at the township office and we can help direct them to a social service that could help them. Stay strong, my friends. The road ahead of us is uncertain, and in many ways, we are in a crisis. But as always, in crisis, there is opportunity. Look for the opportunity, and we will get through this. I have no doubt that we will persevere and we will rise up. And in breaking news this afternoon, in case you didn't hear, the Premier, Doug Ford, released a press release, and this will be the good news that we're all looking for. He has confirmed that the Easter Bunny is an essential service. So to all the kids out there, no worries, you may not find him in a park or in a playground, but the Easter Bunny is essential, and he will be out and about this weekend. So with that good news, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of our meeting tonight. So we don't have an in-camera session. We don't have any petitions or delegations tonight. In front of you, you've got the minutes from our council meeting from March 17th, and then the special meeting minutes that we held on March 31st. And if there is nothing that needs to be corrected, amended, or added, I would look for a mover and a seconder to approve those as circulated. Moved by Councillor Regan and seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. The business arising from the minutes, you've got in front of you, most of them are ongoing. I know we will be speaking to one of them, one of the items on that list tonight, but is there anything that needs to be added to that list from council? Okay, seeing none, we move into the communications report. So there's a few of them there for your reading, and two have been highlighted by staff. And Ron, did you want to speak to the first one with the Minister of Finance's Ontario's action plan responding to COVID.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The information that we received had to do with the deferral of the education property tax remittances. So those that the municipality collects through the payment of property tax to property owners, and what the provincial government has done is basically from the municipality to the school boards for 90 days. So what that means, the payments have been pushed back. However, I do believe that there is payments due in December, and I'm looking to the treasurer. She's nodding her. So that means there's two payments in December. One will be December 15th and the other December. So that's good news. We haven't heard anything from the county level yet, so I don't know whether, Madam Mayor, that's going to be discussed at a future county. But that was on the first page. If you flip the page over to page 2, they talk about the 20 assessment, and that's the Ontario property tax reassessment that was planned. Those numbers were supposed to be going out, I believe, starting in June, possibly, but their new assessment would be for the next 4 years going forward. That has been placed on your assessment for 2020, the amount of assessment that will appear on your tax amount of your assessment that will appear on your 2021 tax bill. So that could assist a number of people as well that we're looking at. It was going to change a lot, and it was going to be a lot of work. And I think the kudos to the province for this is not the year to do that. So thank you very much for them as well. So on the first page, I don't think there's too much more on that one. The second one, the changes to the drinking water and wastewater systems, and what the province has done there is a lot of these systems have pretty limited personnel to look after those items. Are not endangering anybody, but they are making provision all those testing methods to continue with people who wouldn't maybe normally otherwise be. I'm looking at Jeff Little here. Jeff, did you want to comment on any of those changes? Oh, just lost him.
Nope.
Oh, I think he's gone.
Oh, there he is.
Jeff, did you have something? He keeps bouncing around on me. Okay, Jeff, can you hear us, Jeff?
Yep, I can hear you now, Ron.
Okay, did you have any further comments on there?
I didn't hear you. I obviously bounced off and then I just came back on. So
okay.
If I repeat,
so the one graph in here, it says the emergency order also permits system owners and operators to temporarily employ non-certified individuals. So that's an important distinction, that they're qualified, but they're not a proper license. So again, they're qualified, they're just not, they don't have that license in their hand.
So these two, there's two things with this. One, not that we need to right now, but it does give us the flexibility that John can go back in and actually perform operations at the water facilities because he did hold the certificates. So that is an option for us under this notice. And the second thing that I'll just point out on this notice is, and we have done that, is we have sent an application in to the ministry for a pandemic relief on our lead testing. And we're just waiting for confirmation on that. We go into people's houses and perform, I think it's 5 lead tests inside residential housing. So at this point, we don't really want to do that. So we're going to look for a relief on that till a later date in the year.
Okay. Any questions on those 2 highlighted reports that or communications that Ron spoke to? Daniel. Councillor Regan.
Hi, thanks. So I just had a question. So I just want to be clear that they're still testing on a regular basis like we're supposed to. I might have, you cut out a little bit, so I just wanted to make sure. So everything's being tested, everything's still safe.
Yep, everything, yeah, to Councilor Reagan, everything is still operating like it should be. We're doing all the testing, the samples are going in. The only samples that we're asking for to be relieved from is the lead testing. That's the only part.
Madam Mayor.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other communication reports that we've received that council wanted to speak to? Any questions that they had on anything that was received?
Hi, Kathy, Peter.
Yep, Peter.
Under the Lake Huron compliance report, there was one incident where E. coli was detected and the proper steps weren't taken. Can you guys talk to that a little bit, or do you have some info?
I can get it for you. I have that actually in my notes because that was brought up at my last board meeting. I don't have the report in front of me, but I can get back to you. I don't know if Jeff knows anything about it, but it was a minimal amount and there might have even been concern with the way the test had gone, but I will definitely get that information to you, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, moving on to committee reports. CEDC, anything, Lisa? Or
No, nothing yet. We're still just continuing on with all our social media postings and everything for our local businesses. And we're coming up with a few campaigns this week to kind of go through and think of ways to kind of promote the new businesses.
Mhm. Yeah, good opportunity to remind everybody to support local. Our businesses are doing what they can to be creative to keep themselves going during this time. Blue Water Recycling, Dave, Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, nothing to report. We had a quick meeting, but our next meeting is in a couple weeks.
Okay.
It was just a virtual meeting, so it had nothing new to report. No.
Okay. Lake Huron, I'll get that information to Peter. Fire boards. Is there anything to report from the fire boards? Ron?
Just one item, Madam Mayor. I'm going to try and schedule a Zoom meeting for the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Board. Back the members from Perth South to see if they have access to that technology and they can. But otherwise, if that's not possible, it'll have to wait until the end of this. We can have a meeting.
Okay. I did actually have a question. I know that the province had issued a fire ban for fire prone areas, and there was some miscommunication. And I know that we addressed that on our social media. But I know in speaking with Chief DeBrouwer earlier this week, he indicated that there might be something coming from the chiefs regarding a countywide ban. Have we heard anything about that or anything? Ron?
Heard anything to that effect? We do have a countywide CAO meeting tomorrow, so it may be part of that agenda. So okay. I will find out.
Okay, but at this time, just a reminder, there is no ban. ABCA and Upper Thames, Councillor Westman. Oh, did we lose him?
Temporarily, hang on. Okay, there I am. All right, yeah, we haven't had any meetings, but there have been some notices of cancellations of the partner appreciation night, and there are some closures of some of the features in the Sauble Bayfield and the Upper Thames, the parks like Rock Glen and Fanshawe and Wildwood and Pittock. They're limiting access to that. So anyone who's got a curiosity on what's been canceled or what's been closed can visit either of their Facebook presence or their websites to get the list of details. They are encouraging people to be active, but of course we want, social distancing and people to be safe while they're using any of the facilities.
Okay. All right. Parks and Recreation.
Nothing right now, Madam Mayor.
Okay, great. And nothing for Canada Day. We'll move on. Oh, sorry, and I never did ask council, were there any questions to any of those committee reports? Many members of council.
Oh, it's Peter, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
Paul, what's happening due to the summer programs, employment? What's been happening there for you at Parks and Rec?
In regards to that, we've put a halt on, unlike other municipalities, we actually hadn't already hired these members, which is kind of a good thing right now, because I know a lot of them are kind of just putting a hiatus on their start date, where it's not looking very positive right now that we'll have programming or summer camps, but that'll all just depend on how the course of everything works. So for right now, indefinitely, we're just kind of holding off, and then having our full-time staff do anything that part-time staff may have done during the summertime at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to staff reports. Ron.
Let me unmute myself first. Sorry, Madam Mayor. I don't have a whole lot. I hope to have a better report at the next meeting with regards to all the changes that are occurring right now with regard to residential construction. I think that that changed majorly late last Friday. So the construction that's occurring in our industrial park has been put on hold. Residential construction has been basically, if the basement has been dug, footings have been poured, you can continue, but there will be no new I was going to say permits issued. I don't think we'll issue the actual permit. We'll still process applications and be ready when the emergency order from the province gets lifted. But for the time being, it's basically finished what's out there, with the exception of the commercial and industrial. So it's having an impact. Obviously, there's some complaints that are coming in asking why some of the construction sites are fairly small. They can comply with social distancing, but again, I stress that a lot of people are having to make sacrifices during this period, and it's hard to pass one rule that will cover every situation. So at this point, that's kind of where we sit with regards to that. So and that's about all I had. The meetings are coming fast and furious these days, and the things are developing as we go. So most of the stuff is obviously happening at the provincial and federal level, yeah, so far the operation of the office, of course the door is closed to the public, but I think most people have sort of adapted and pick up the phone and call us. There is a skeleton staff in here. We try and keep it to 5 or less in the office at any one time. Mr. Little can talk about the public works department as well, but I think everybody's doing a good job, complying with the social distancing aspect, and I think we've all become germaphobes over the last 3 weeks. So we're continuing on. We will keep up the fight, and hopefully we can get over this hump and out soon. So that's all I had, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Ron at this time?
Oh, one question, Madam Mayor. I was talking to some colleagues in the healthcare industry, and what might be coming down the pipe there is the Ontario government maybe ask them to separate any COVID costs for reimbursement in the future. I'm not sure if that's going to come down to municipalities, but it might be something we keep in the back of our mind. If there's cost incurred directly for COVID, there might be something we can recuperate down the road from the government.
Actually, I was on a call today, Councillor Masterakis, and we had that discussion. It was funny, I made notes because I thought I would send an email off to Catherine tomorrow with regards to that. So I know that they did that during the SARS episode. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Okay, moving on. Tina, did you have anything from your office?
I don't, other than I did receive notification today that the AMCTO conference is canceled. So
Okay.
I won't be attending the Blue Mountain Resort.
The resort.
That's right. Other than that, no, I don't have anything.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I imagine there's been a number of conferences that have been canceled.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Tina on anything? Okay, moving on. Finance, Catherine.
Just a couple of reports. The first one is the public sector salary disclosure. That's just there for information. Every year we have to report to an online portal any staff that has made more than $100,000 in the previous year. So as you can see, we just had one for 2019, and that's indicated in the report. So that's just information telling you that that requirement has been completed. And the other report I have came from our special council meeting we had last week, and where we deferred implementing the increase in the water and sewer rates. And you asked to have what the financial impact of that would be. So did some calculations, and this is what we came up with. So it was about a $9,000 loss in revenue altogether just for that 1 quarter, but not implementing the increases for January 1st.
So just to confirm, Catherine, that would be for the increase between January and April, correct?
Yeah, so the April bills went out, and if they went out with the new rates, it would have been $9,000 higher.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Catherine on those? Okay, do you have anything else, Catherine?
That's all I have, really.
That's okay, good. Any other questions for Catherine besides on the reports? Okay, seeing none. Nothing from planning.
Actually, Madam Mayor, if I could, just one quick thing on planning. One unexpected fallout, I guess, of this whole COVID-19 situation. Council may recall at the last meeting, March 17th, we did we approved 4 severances for Van Giels over on, I believe it was Phillip Street. So those notices of decisions went out the very next day. The deputy clerk sent those out. As part of the orders in that first week that came down from the province, the province pushed the pause button on any limitation periods. So that has had an impact. So what that means at the end of the day is that the 20-day appeal period is suspended. So we can't continue on with the appeal period until such time as the emergency order and that piece of legislation has been rescinded. So we've been put in the unfortunate position of not being able to allow the Van Giels to proceed. Now, back up to last Friday when the new residential construction has been halted. So I'm not so sure that it would have made a difference with the planning aspect anyway, but that is one thing that we've had to deal with. I did also receive a call from the county planning director, Dirk Vanderwerf, who also said that our Lucan Badolf official plan amendment has been placed on hold as well. So it's again, we're no different than anybody else.
So to clarify, so it's placed on hold, and then when this is lifted, do you start that process then? Or if there was 4 days left, then it would just wait out for 4 days? Or
in the case of our approved severance applications, that's unclear because the effective date of that freeze was the day before we actually approved it. So they backdated the approval of that piece of legislation to March 16th, which was the day before the council meeting. So, I mean, we're trying to get answers to these questions, because I don't know whether that means that decision is now null and void, or does the decision stand, and then do we have to issue another notice? This is going to be a lot of confusion for people who who are kind of on the circulation list there, because they're going to go, well, didn't we already get this? I don't know. it's not going to be pleasant.
All right. Okay, moving on. Public Works, Jeff. You just have to unmute yourself, Jeff.
There we go. Okay, Madam Mayor, I have a couple reports. I'll start with the Frank Street budget update report. Dillon Consulting finished up the engineering for us on Frank Street. And after the engineering's done, it's always good to go back and look at what the estimates were and compared to the engineering that we found. So having done that, we looked at there was an increase, considerable increase to the Frank Street reconstruction portion. And I listed a number of things that we found when we did the engineering. One of the bigger ones was the sidewalk and curb replacement. We had originally hoped not to replace any of the sidewalk or just the pieces that needed it, as well as the curb. But due to all the utilities and the depth of the utilities, we're going to have to replace all the curb and all the sidewalk there. So that had to be added into the project, as well as there was a couple of items in the stormwater area behind the museum over by the Donnelly facility that it floods in there. So there needs to be an upgrade to some of the stormwater piping that goes over in behind the museum, which wasn't originally in the original estimate. As well, another big one when the engineering was completed that I'd just like to point out is because there's two existing water mains already in the road, one working and one abandoned, we can't put another water main in there until those other two have been taken out. So we have to actually install a temporary water main down Frank Street and continue feeding everybody water through a temporary water main while the new one's being installed. So again, that's a bit of an increase in the cost to the water side of things that originally we had just believed we could put another water main in beside the existing water main and then just switch everybody over. So it was a couple of changes. So I just wanted to point that out. So on the overall budget side of things, the numbers there, you can see originally we had budgeted $540,000 and after post-engineering and putting into contingency costs, there's a little bit of legal costs that we should look into on just coming off William Street, the easement we have in there. It comes in at $823,000. So it's up quite a bit. So I just like council to be aware of that. I'll just make a note that it looks like, although the paving tender has not come back yet, that tender looks like it's going to be coming in under budget. There looks like there's a surplus coming in that side of things. So that's the good news with our tendering. It looks like that one's actually going to come back as a surplus. Obviously, we all know oil is down and the prices are down and that sort of thing. So in the financial impact, there is a shortfall of about $201,000 in the construction capital budget. That's money that we have set aside for the work in the road, sidewalk, storm sewer, that sort of thing. There will also be a need for $34,439 from the water capital reserve fund to cover the increase in the water side of things. And then on the wastewater, it just means our surplus that we would have had for the year would be decreased by $32,000. Having moving forward on making a recommendation with the COVID-19 situation and Mr. Ford's announcement Premier Ford's announcement last Friday into Saturday, some of the construction companies are starting to shut down. The bigger guys, Omega, L82, are starting to not be as productive right now as they maybe would have been if we weren't experiencing the COVID-19. So having said that, there's a bit of concern in the industry of work already planned not getting completed as scheduled. So at this point, and I talked to Chris at the county, and we have a meeting again tomorrow. I originally had in my recommendation to tender Frank Street, even though we're over budget, to go ahead and see what the tender comes back at. I'm going to delay that recommendation until we see exactly how the construction side of things play out. Because if these construction companies already have work in the books and they're not getting them done, we may not get a competitive bid if we're asking these companies to do more work. So even though I got a recommendation there to move forward to the tender side of things, it certainly would not hurt to be prudent to make sure that we get the best price moving forward. So even though I presented the report as to tender, I'm actually taking that back out and saying more or less this is an information report for now. We'll update this, maybe give ourselves maybe two or 3 weeks and see what happens with the COVID-19 situation. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure there's probably some questions on this, and I'll open it up to
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Any questions on this report for Public Works? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Sorry, not on that report, but a question for Jeff, if I could ask it now.
Yep.
Sure.
Just where, for the Sainsbury lights, how is this gonna affect that? When was it? Any idea when it was in the queue to be started? Was it the spring, summer, fall? Is that gonna impact that, or have you got any sense?
Excuse me. I don't have a sense on the COVID-19 situation in the effect on the signal lights. I have been in discussion with or in communication with Dillon Consulting because I wanted an update for council on that, because there is a bit of a concern because there is a timetable set for those lights, the signal lights. So we still don't have final approval for the MTO for those lights to move ahead. Jason from Dillon's, who's been the main communication through that, says he's expecting approval at any time. When that happens, it's about a 20-week period to go from approval to actually shovels in the ground. So if we get that approval right now, we'd be looking at September. Having said that, Deputy Mayor Manders, if these larger companies have enough work already booked, we'd have to see just how that all plays out when the tendering process comes through. Having said that, we want to move forward with it. So, I mean, I think that's something that Chris at the county and we'd have to discuss, because it is their intersection. But for right now, it's still kind of up in the air, that project.
Any other questions for Jeff on the report? Daniel, Councillor Reagan.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, so just so I understand, so this report, we're just putting everything on hold here. Jeff, is there anything critical there that needs to be done? Is there anything that, is there health and safety issues there? Is there something that we need to do?
Good question, Councillor Reagan. The one main thing that has put this project to the forefront in the asset management plan is there's a sag in the sanitary line. So what happens is the staff, we flush that regularly. And so any sediment that does build up in there, we keep it cleaned out. So we'd go in this year and we'd actually flush that section of line just to make sure it's clear. And having done that, I think we'd be fine if we wanted to delay it for another year, but we can address that in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess the question that I would have, Jeff, with regards to construction and essential service, and it's for clarification, I think, for our residents, is that any work that we're doing on our infrastructure is considered to be essential, and we can move forward with that. So to be clear, if we can take on new projects and obviously continue any work that we've already got going, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so with that, I guess we'll look for more information to come in a couple weeks with regards to this project.
Correct.
Okay.
Second report for tonight is just basically a quarter public works update for everybody. We've talked about a couple of the points already, but we'll run through fairly quickly here. On the water side of things, the operators are working, and they're working isolated. We're keeping Andrew and Matt apart on their duties, just so that if there ever was an issue, it doesn't get the two main operators, we keep them isolated. So that's hopefully that works, and we never have an issue. We've already talked about the ministry allowing a retiree such as John to come back into play if we need to bring John back in there. So we do have him as a backup. I also mentioned that we are applying for a pandemic relief on our lead testing. By no means does this mean we do not have to do the lead testing. It just means at some point when it's safe to go into people's houses, we can do that. So, and this is something the ministry understood right away. They were on this right away with this. So, so that's kind of where we are on the water side of things. Other than that, everything's functioning normally. We had a small, I'd just like to say we had we didn't have, but the condo complex on Walnut Street did have a small water main break on the weekend. Because it was private, our guys viewed it, saw what the issues were, but it was repaired by the condo corporation. So if there was any comments in the community, it was a private contractor looking after that, because there was a couple of complaints about isolation and workers entering people's homes. But it's a private matter that has to be dealt with. So moving on to the sanitary side of things, the sewers, the headworks replacement. I guess I should start. We had a meeting with BM Ross actually today, and we did a lot of organizing and going over some stuff. So the headworks replacement project, the funding has been pushed back. We know that. We're looking at May into June now. I have no idea what the effects of everything right now on the funding will be. We'll just keep looking for it and see how things go. So in the meantime, I have cost estimates on moving forward with design and basically a timetable for the headworks replacement. But at this point, until we know about the funding and where we go with the funding, that's on the back burner. It's all organized, it's ready to go, but we'll wait till the announcement on the funding before we bring that forward. On the expansion side of things, we are still online as our timetable was previously from 2019. In 2019, the timetable was a 7-year capacity. We had to have expansion done before the 7th year. Obviously, we did an evaluation and an update to the capacity at the Lucan wastewater treatment plant. We're still in line with everything. In fact, due to the newer construction methods, we're finding that they're more efficient in their water usage. And I think they're definitely more efficient in their water infiltration into the system. So we're finding we've actually gained a little bit of capacity at the plant. Certainly nothing to write home about, but we've actually increased our capacity at the plant through efficiency there. So that's at 6 years. The tests, the ABAC is moving forward. We're hoping that's completed in the next month or so, and we've got that in our hands. And all the other aspects of the expansion is moving forward as planned. So that's the sanitary side of things. We have a new operator or new manager. Renee is taking over for Rod. Rod's moved over to North Middlesex. Renee sat in with our meeting today with BM Ross. She used to work at actually Luke and Badolf, so she's familiar with the plants. So she seems like a very qualified person to join the team. So over the next couple of weeks or next couple of council meetings, we'll arrange for her to join us to prevent last year's report on the plan itself when we get comfortable with all our electronic meetings and that sort of thing. So on the road side of things, maintenance is moving forward. We're keeping our guys isolated. That's pretty easy this time of year because they can work in separate machines. The grading, the patrolling, signs, that sort of thing has taken place. We've got our sweeping completed. There was a bit of confusion with the county this year, and I think with the COVID-19, they were very unsure of their workforce. So it's too bad because we really tried to work. We like to work with the county on that because our roads intersect so much, and the public just doesn't understand sometimes the different road authorities. But anyways, we've got ours completed, and the next step on that will be the parking stalls on Main Street are going to be painted. I've talked to Mobile about that. Again, they can keep their workers isolated. They actually work apart. They actually wear masks and the whole 9 yards when they're doing the work. So I've talked to them about that, and we're moving forward with that. The other discussion, I just want to point out, I did have a discussion with Brian on the flower program. And he's obviously, Brian's very, very, I don't know what the right word. He's very enthusiastic about his flowers. So he with this isolation, he's concerned, and I don't blame him with everything. So we're not starting the flower program till at least May. The flowers are ordered. I don't see any issue with as long as we'll keep isolated. And I've said to Brian that we'll work this through and we'll find a way to get it done. So the program will move forward. And it'll start in May. Excuse me. On the drainage side of things, we have the Roman line drain. It's about 90% complete. Went very well. The company that did it did an excellent job. We have no issues there. On the stump drain side of things, when we got our tenders back, they were too high to continue. So we met with the owners previously before all this and got direction from them, and they've asked for quotes to come back in to see if there can be lower prices obtained rather than going with the lowest tender, just because it came in so high. It was close to, I believe, 40 or 50% higher than what was estimated. So seems like so that's where the stump drain is. We are currently taking quotes on it. The other thing I just wanted to point out, we have 3 very large drains up near Granton area on Stonehouse. They are basically engineered and ready to go. But again, the drainage, very similar to planning, we have to have public meetings. And being such large drains that do incorporate some of the residents of Granton, it's almost impossible at this point to hold those meetings. Having said that, as if we get comfortable with the way we can conduct these meetings, we will look at seeing if we can come up with a solution to try and hold some sort of public meeting the best we can to try and get these drains to move forward. Because if we don't continue on with them, they'll get pushed back to next year just due to the tendering process. And then finally, I think I did touch Dave, our Deputy Mayor Manders did touch on the signal lights, that we're pretty Dylan's is optimistic and hoping approval will come in at any time now. And if that happens, it looks like construction will be September at this point. And other than that, that's kind of the update of where we are. I think everything's going along fine out there. Staff is, well aware of being isolated and they're keeping their distance and yet things are getting done.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff on the update that he's just presented? One question I might have for you, Jeff, is I know that there are different types of projects, drainage and construction projects, but there seems to be a theme in the work that we're putting out there and asking for costs to come back at, and everything seems to be coming back much higher than we anticipated. I know when we put project costs together, or when you put project costs together, you look at the costs from last year, you put in what is to be believed a reasonable increase, and yet we are still getting numbers back that we're not prepared for. Is there any talk out there as to why this is happening? Is this something that we can see going on? I mean, and I know now because we're in an even different situation, but I guess my question is there a reason why this is happening, and any glimpse of what is in the future for our costs?
Madam Mayor, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. There's a couple of two things to it. The first thing is we did have a discussion, and I discussed this with Spreets, and we were talking about the prices showing up higher, particularly tile going in the ground. It's showing up higher than it did last year, and above what a normal rate increase you would think would be in place. And there was discussion around the last few years. There's been a real push at keeping costs down, making companies trying to earn a profit but keep costs down. And it's almost like a bit of a cork in a bottle. They've been keeping everything pushed down to try and make a certain revenue, and it's almost like that cork came out and there's been an increase, a jump rather than a gradual increase. It looks like it's been a bit of a jump, and that's coming from Spreets, who've seen some of these rises. On the other side of things, on a couple of the projects, particularly the Frank Street one, we use the asset management plan, and the asset management plan actually gives us the numbers that they estimate the project will come in. Now, obviously, we should do the engineering and then reevaluate the numbers, because until you do the engineering, you really don't know, ground conditions. You don't know what you'll find until the engineering's done. So having said that, though, the basic estimates are in the asset management plan. And we're finding that the estimate plan that we have right now came to us at the last year. It's only about a year old, but we're finding the numbers coming in a bit low. Having said that, we should go back and the plan was always to update that plan as we go along. Projects get taken off, but as the numbers come in, we will update the estimation of completing the projects. Having said that, the one thing everybody should be aware is that our capital levies on the water and wastewater side are set to the asset management plan. So if we come back and we look at the asset management plan saying our estimates are a little low, we're going to have to raise our estimates. We're going to have to look at what our capital levies are, because they're there to meet the estimates. So I think there's a bit of a domino effect there, but I think connected to the question, I think our asset management plan estimates are a bit low right now, and we're going to have to reevaluate that this year, because that's what we use. That's what we use to set the budget is those estimates. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Any other questions for Jeff on this? Okay, moving on. Did you want to talk about Nagle Drive?
Okay. So lots and lots of information and lots of discussion. So I'll start off. I was hoping to have a physical report to council, but it's been such a changing, so much information going on, and we're trying to find out all sorts of different things that I'll maybe go through my so-called report, and we can have a discussion and we can go from there. So last council meeting, I did present the numbers on Nagle. Obviously they're high, and council directed staff, myself, to meet with the residents of Nagle to determine one, if as a group they wish to continue with the water main extension project. And the reason being that with the numbers coming up so much as they have, I think council wants an idea if the project is still desired by the residents. So having said that, on April 1st, staff, including Councillor Reagan, we met with residents. Two of the residents attended in person, isolated apart in the council chambers, and the rest were met electronically. Having said that, out of the 12, one did not attend or nor did send any communication. So this meeting that took place, we had 11 residents represented. It was presented to the residents that although a firm number for their cost was not available, we did prepare an estimate of between at least 32,000 up to 41,000 to move this project forward. And then we were open it up to questions and comments and that sort of thing. So, and basically, just so council knows, we base the 41,000 on council not contributing, staying to the $100,000 towards the project. And we looked at the 32 of upping it to 200,000 on the project, and use that as a ballpark for the residents to throw around there. So after the discussion, it became quite clear there are three groups. Excuse me for a second. Three groups. There is a group that definitely wants to continue with the project. They really see the value in having municipal water. They would like to know that at the higher costs, that the numbers are fair, that what they're asked to be contributing is reasonable, and that there's a plan in place, which I can understand that. There's a second group that is very unsure during this meeting. I mean, it was a lot of information to take in, and there was a lot of disappointment in the numbers, obviously. So there was a group that was very unsure whether they wanted to continue, whether they wanted more information. They just were not sure where to go at the present moment. There also was at least one person in the meeting that indicated they would not like to consider, or would not consider moving forward at this price, as well as one of the property owners, one of the residents, did state that the person that did not attend or did not communicate has never been really in favor of this project moving forward from the get-go. Having said that, I have not received that, as that was just a comment. So I can't comment anymore on that. So after the meeting, though, there was one that said, no, I do not want to continue. So it was determined after the meeting that there is not 100% to be to support this. And again, my plan was always to have 100% commitment for this plan, to have the 12. It came forward as 12. We've talked about dividing the price up on 12. So I kind of I was pretty hard maybe on continuing with the 12 or nothing at all through the meeting. Having said that, I did ask, we did ask for comments. We asked for questions and comments to be provided to us. We opened the door right up till 4 o'clock today, so I could bring anything forward to council. And I wanted to make sure that residents had a time to digest some of the information that they had at the meeting, because a bit of it was shocking to them. So, so as a follow-up from the meeting, over the last few days, it has become clear that a majority of the residents would like to continue, even if there is not 100% commitment. That was very clear. I had that comment from a number of different residents that they would like to continue, even if it's not 100%. Another comment that came through quite clear was residents would like a commitment from council to help make their decision. In fact, some have requested at least 200,000 in support, or they would not like to continue with the project. I think what they're looking for there is they're just looking for a little bit more firm numbers to make this decision in place. And then again, I did have one of the residents did come back and say, and it's the same one, that they do not want to participate in this program. So I have said that I've always been in favor of 12 and supported 12 in this. However, with the number of requests that came in, with the majority to move forward with a majority, I believe I should bring that forward to council. So I should bring some options forward to council on this. So today, Ron, myself, Councillor Reagan was involved. We met or had an electronic meeting with David Samuels, county solicitor, and we asked for his advice on proceeding without 100% commitment. In that meeting, he provided 4 options, and I'll basically go over each option as he presented it. There's not a lot of information. He's going to follow up with us on the more of the details on this, because this was put together so quickly. A lot of the details still need to come together. So the first option is to basically to divide the residence cost that's required among the households that are connected. So if we based it on 12 and 10 hook up, the 10 have to cover the 12. The downside of this is that the cost per household becomes prohibitive and remains a blockage for some of the households. So it really drives up their cost, but that's one of the options. Option number 2 is again to divide the cost, residence cost by 12, and the township cover the cost of the households who do not connect. This would end up cost or not costing. This would end up the township would have to carry more funds going forward, and that if someone did want to hook up later, we could recover that funds as they hook up to the line. It's been done previously, very similar to what they did going through Granton with the water line. And you can keep interest on there, so you can regain the value of the money can be brought back as people connect up to it. So that is an option. Third option is to impose a connection fee by law and force all 12 residents to connect. Generally, this is done on the idea that you're improving the neighborhood or you're improving the community. It's something that can be done. It's not uncommon. The only thing that David pointed out was that he mentioned that there could be a resident could initiate a legal action against us, because originally we talked about the request came from the residents rather than the township. So he did caution us that this option, there may be a question about legal action. He's going to look into that. We're going to bring much more details back on that option, because it is the more complicated option. And then option 4 obviously is to basically abandon the project just because it's becoming too complex, and the municipality decides not to continue on. Having said all that, we're at this point now. I do have a couple of recommendations I'd like to bring forward, but I'm sure there's probably some questions before we go to recommendations. And maybe Ron, because you've been through all the meetings and you've sat in also on a lot of the comments, or Councillor Reagan, also maybe you have some discussion items that I've missed or would like to point out.
Okay, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The one part I just want to make sure that everybody understands, because I don't think, Jeff, you raised it. During the meeting today, I asked the engineer, what timeline is there on the tender? How good is that tender for? And he did say that the tender is good for 60 days. So we do have some time. And so that's a critical piece, because I think up until now it's been kind of boom, 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 and we're asking people to make a decision in a matter of a few days. And I think that puts undue pressure on some of the homeowners there as well. So I just wanted to make that comment as well. Jeff spoke a little bit about the fact that up until now, it's been 12 together, which is, and 12 being unanimous puts us on one road. And what I mean by that is in the manner and how we bill it. It puts us on a certain path, I guess you could say. If it's a, our numbers, we think right now is probably a 10 are for it and 2 are against it. That's still a majority, but that's not a unanimous situation on the street. So if that were to be the case and council chose to, push the project forward and through to the objections to the 2 people, that puts us on a different course of action, and it's a different method that has to be used. And I think that's what Jeff talked a little bit about earlier, and that's why Mr. Samuels, the solicitor, is the one to advise us. So I just wanted to make those couple comments. Thank you.
Okay. Daniel, did you, as you've sat in the last few meetings, did you have anything else to add before I open up to questions from council?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks. Hi, everybody. So I've been in on a few meetings, and I came in late to the discussion. So a couple of things. First of all, I think our staff, Julie and Jeff, have provided remarkable service for residents. Putting a lot of numbers together, right down to things like monthly payments, and that's been ongoing. So I think there's a tremendous service, and hearing the back and forth and being in the meetings. The one thing that I have noticed is that everybody seems to be trying to make this work, and I'm just going to come right out and just say I'm supportive of us doing something. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it makes sense. I think that it's an investment for the municipality. I think it's an investment for residents. So I have no problem with that. I know it's a lot of money. I get all that. But again, I think at this point, and my understanding, and I didn't realize this at first, but it's been going on for about 4 years, I think, the discussion. So I think we're at a point where if we've got the residents that are willing to go into this, we've got to come up with an option. I think that we can present, we can get buy-in, however we're going to do that. And again, that's sort of where I sort of stand on that. So thank you. That's really all I have to say.
Okay. Any questions at this time from any of the rest of the members of council? Okay, Jeff, did you want to go forward with what you are recommending at this point in time?
So, Madam Mayor, at this point in time, and again, I would recommend just from the discussions and the comments that I have, that I would recommend council set a limit at which they are committed to this project, and that the residents have a clear message that here's what we're going to do. Now it's time to come up with a plan. And so that my recommendation is that as a moving forward, that we set that limit.
Okay, is staff coming forward with a dollar amount recommendation?
Well, we've talked about it. Ron and I have discussed it. We have kicked around the $200,000 benchmark that we would recommend not proceeding past that mark at this point, unless we do a better business plan or a feasibility plan moving forward. But having said that, Ron, I don't know if you would like to comment on that.
Thanks, Jeff. It's a big increase, but I think we're more or less sharing the pain that the 12 residents there have as well. And I do agree with the councillor Regan's comment there that this is an investment. This is looking to the future. I think it's a good project for the municipality. I think it will pay dividends in the future, and I do feel I agree with Jeff that that 200,000. I feel comfortable recommending that to council. So I do agree with Jeff's recommendation on a go-forward basis. We have had discussions with BM Ross, the engineer, about implementing, if this project were to proceed, implementing a local area development charge that strictly deals with water, that would encompass the industrially designated areas close to the intersection of Highway 4 and Highway 7, as well as all the existing homes in that area that are currently on wells. So I do think there's opportunities to recoup that money at some point in time in the future. It's impossible for us as staff to predict when that will be, but history tells us that once it's there, people will ask for it.
Can you just clarify the development charge? So the development charge, should we go ahead with this, it would not only be industrial lands, it would also be for future residential. So all of those homes, like the other side of the intersection of Roman Line and Highway 4. If somebody along there wanted to hook up, or a number of them, then they would be subject to a hookup fee as well as a development charge?
Correct. And what needs to be determined is, and I just want to clarify, when you say future residential, there's probably not a whole lot more new homes going to be in there. It's the people that are on the existing wells now, right, between the edge of Nagle Drive and sort of Elginfield, and then around the school, I guess to the north of the school on the Roman Line there. So those are the houses we are talking that will eventually, and it may be, Lord knows how long into the future before they get there. So how the development charge would work, they would look at the people who would benefit from an expansion, from a further expansion to that existing water main, because again, council may recall or should recall that we are oversizing the pipe. Okay, so what that means is we're not just extending a pipe from the edge of Lucan now to Nagle Drive to only service those 12 people. We are oversizing that to take into account the further extension of that line at some point in time in the future. So those costs can be recovered through the development charge process for all these extra homes that could be serviced with a future extension of that water main. So that includes the industrial area.
Okay, so I was aware of the industrial land. I guess in my mind, I just want to be clear, it's for future expansion, but it would be on existing homes.
It would be a combination of both. So existing homes that are currently on wells.
Yep.
Plus this, yes. And in order to do that, I just want to make sure that everybody's got a clear understanding. We would have to have an engineer design what that future expansion looks like, how far the pipe goes, what size that pipe is. and the benefiting area, that's all part of the calculations for the development charge.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so Deputy Mayor.
So what's staff's, what's it gonna be if going across the road then by St. Pat's, if we bring this in and when one resident needs it out there and has well failure, needs to drill a well, and we all know the expense to go back under the MTO, back under that road would be massive expense. We have 12 residents here. What's the number then for staff when we get that phone call? So across down towards Elginfield, if there's one well failure down there, this is going to be a massive expense for us to either deny or accept for another person.
Yeah, and that's, I guess I'll jump in there. And that's the real question is, you know, it's hard to predict that demand. If one well does come up, the idea is to then see if we can put it in and collect everybody. Again, this is where you go back to that community upgrade to the system. We kind of have to make the choice whether, we can put the line in and we're going to hook everybody up to that, because it will, if we continue each section, it will take everybody to hook up. There will not be a cost for one to extend this for one house. It would have to be sectioned. So if we go across the intersection, we will have to pick up the school and the remaining houses to make it feasible.
And my concern is there's been no call from either of those areas for this. There's not a consensus even on that Nagle Drive road for this, and just where expenses have gone. To me, it's going to be very concerning for future council if there's one well failure at either of those spots. And I don't know. I don't know, we're really flexing this from where we were 2 years ago, 2-3 years ago, from conclusive, all 12 residents to now it doesn't matter, to a budget of about $100,000. Now it doesn't matter. Just seems to be a lot. It doesn't matter now. So that's just a couple comments.
Okay, any other questions from council? Peter, Councillor Mastarakis.
Do you see any ability to recover the extra 100 or once we put this through the existing homes on the other side, it's going to be new charges for that going in. It's not going to be any recovery for the current work, correct?
So there will be a fee. There'll be enough that whatever we put forward. So if we want to cover if council wants to stick to the 100 or 150 or 200, that portion will have to be recovered moving forward. So what we would do is prepare a plan, a feasibility plan on how so those costs will be sitting there for hookup. So basically we'll have a hookup fee. There'll be a development charge for new development, but there'll be a hookup fee to the existing properties. So when we do move forward, there'll be a small amount that everybody will have to pay to this project. So the amount the municipality is willing to commit will be brought back into the township. The idea the idea behind this whole thing is to recover the costs. The hard part is there's no direct timetable on those recoveries is the real problem.
So you wouldn't be able to put projections, say at 100,000, 150,000 and 200,000 to say what it might look like, recovery costs, time frame for those three scenarios, let's say.
We can figure out a per connection fee per property that's existing, but we cannot put a date on it because until we're ready to move forward with another section, the timetable is you can't do that.
Did you have anything else, Councillor Mastarakis, at this time?
No, not at this time.
Okay, great, thanks. Deputy Mayor.
So Jeff, then what staff has got on the table would be us to go to 200,000 and the residents to 32,000?
That's correct. I think it actually works out to be, when we've done a little bit more of the calculation, it ends up being 33,680 some dollars presently, with everything, with all the calculations in there.
And what would be the recommendation if there's fallout then from, if it's 10, he said it looks like 10 are willing to pay that, 2 potentially aren't. So how does that affect our budget, and how does that work again? What would be your recommendation there on the other 2? A forced hookup, or what would that look like?
So, I mean, that's still open for discussion, but my recommendation is to set the limit at which we're comfortable with, the municipality's comfortable with, and then we go back to the residents with the information and let them come back and maybe do some discussion on proceeding, because I think the residents need a bit of time to get all this processed, and because we've never talked about moving forward with a majority. This is something new that we've just brought up today, or in the last couple of days. So I think if we are able to set a limit that the township was comfortable with, took that back to the residents, and then gave them some options, or give them some discussions. We talked about having another meeting with them to discuss the options moving forward. I think that's where we would go on it. I'm a little bit uncomfortable recommending one of the options now until we know a little bit more of the information, and a little bit more of what the residents see as what a limit that we're comfortable putting in place.
Okay, I guess for a comment, I'd be satisfied with the 200,000 and the 32,000 of residents, but any costs associated would need to be added on to the 32,000 associated dealing with the 2 residents that don't want to hook on. I guess that's my comment. So whatever staff deems actions need to be taken and those costs, they would be added on to the other 10 residents. That would be my comment.
So I will be honest, I did have a discussion prior to the meeting with Ron and Jeff, kind of about the process moving forward. And so, as Jeff said, the question before us tonight is how much we're going to cap our contribution. And then how that is decided, how that works with the residents, like Jeff's been clear, number one, staff has only today been able to have a meeting with, to get some legal advice. And the residents, of course, what they've been presented was quite shocking. It was quite shocking to us, right, when the tender was open. We do have some time to wait and have some more discussions with the residents. And I think what I had said to Jeff and Ron was, depending on where the residents come out, it could be incumbent upon us to have our legal opinion there with them, so that they're fully aware of any risks that we might be taking on, depending on how they would like to see this proceed. So I'd like that to be considered. And the other thing was, I think that as Jeff has said, that there's a group, and I think we've known this right from the very beginning. There's a group that are very communicative, and they are great at giving their opinion and questions and the dialogue and everything. But I think in this case, somehow we have to find a way to hear from all 12 residents, whether it's yes, whether it's no, whether it's whatever. But we've got to get an answer from all 12 so that all of the information is on the table, so that all of the residents can make a decision as to how, and then it will help with us in deciding how this is going to get billed out. So I would like to see a drop dead date given to the residents as to when they get back in touch with staff as to how they want to proceed after they hear about our recommendation tonight. So those are my thoughts on that. With regards to the money, I just want to be clear, since it's a user system, the money is coming from the system, or is it coming from the municipality as a loan to the system? I don't know who would answer that. Catherine, Ron?
I mean, I guess right now, we've always budgeted through the water system. Moving forward, I don't see a problem with that. We do have a good amount. It will cover the fund, the reserve fund will cover this. I don't think that's a problem, but it's always been the system will be covering this.
All right, very good. Okay, yeah, Jeff.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to, and this goes to a previous question about getting the funds back. Really, the step, if we go forward with this, and this has nothing to do with the residents, it has more to do with whatever money or whatever funds we put in to get back out. I would suggest that we continue, and we do use BM Ross to set up a feasibility plan for us. Part of that is I can't answer some of those questions right off the bat with time and how much those connection fees to the existing residents would be. So moving forward, one of the things, and I don't want to do that ahead of the time because that will cost money, and there's no sense spending any more money until we're sure we're going to move forward. So if we decide to move forward and we want to set up a business plan, that's something I would suggest we do at a later date, and then we come up with a plan on getting that money back.
Councillor Regan, did you have a question or comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to ask, I'm just wondering about the tender deadline when we have to act, because Madam Mayor, you mentioned there needs to be some dates, some absolute final dates. So I'm just wondering two questions. The MOE, I know is asking residents about, has sort of been on the residents about the wells, and I wondered if there's a date there, how long that tender is good for. I think that needs to be known. And then we do, and I agree with Madam Mayor that we have to come up with a date, because we need to, I think we need to move on this. Thank you.
Personally, I would like to see us make the recommendation tonight and then have the discussions over the next 2 weeks, and at our next council meeting, then we make a decision on this project for the very reasons that we've talked about over the last number of years. The MOA concerns the residents, and then of course we've got some deadlines, of course, with this tender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Deputy Mayor Dave.
Jeff, I assume that when you present this to the residents then, and it sounded like they were satisfied with the 32,000 and us 200,000. And when you get the nod of the head on that, it's going to take some time, to your point, to spend any money, because then the next step's going to be legally writing this up, or deposits or things like that, I assume, before you would spend any money too. So I assume even after a yes from them, I mean, if they deny it and they're not in favor of it, then it's real simple. But if they say yes, you got some fast work to do.
Correct. And that's part of the reason with the discussions with David today is this is complex. This is just not a handshake and we move on. This has to be determined, and then there has to be an agreement set up depending on what option. If it is the third option, we can move forward as a municipality and move forward with the bylaw and start the process. Having said that, though, we need to come up with a solution on the option and before we go there. But you're right, there is a lot of work to do here before this gets in the ground.
And also too, just to confirm, I'm sure you've answered this, or maybe there's been site visits to all 12 properties. Sorry, and I just forget, is there any concern then at all about potential on these hookups on trees or sheds or sidewalks or anything from the resident standpoint that they're concerned about, or those expenses wouldn't be our concern anyways? But is there, you know, it's such an established area, is there, or is that just simply not a concern? I just,
To be, excuse me, to be honest, during the discussions on this, and as we were right from the fall, the desire to put this in and move this project forward, there was never a worry about what existing infrastructure is there. They would rather see this line go in than worry about a tree or a flower bed at this time. We have included restoration in this project. The only thing we haven't included in this, and I think the residents have been told, they were told at the last meeting, and they'll be told again, that the water line from the house to the road on the private property is their responsibility. So we will not put that line in. So if there's a flower bed to change, or if there's a tree in the way, that's up to them to come up for the solution and to spend that money on how they want to deem that to correct that situation. Our so-called limits are at the property line.
so we have no restoration worry.
Not further on private property, no. That's correct.
Oh, perfect,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Why is there contingency then for restoration if we're not on their property?
So the contingency is not just restoration, it's for the whole project. So if we run into a water vein, say in the field, and there has to be pumps installed, or, you know, if we have run into any sort of obstacle as we're going along, the contingency can be used in agreement that wasn't part of the original tender. So that contingency that's in place can be for anything that pops up.
And the contingency, what percentage of that, again, is the contingency? Like, is there any chance of good news and the project doesn't become expensive percentagely? The percentage, if the contingency doesn't get used, go towards reducing their 32,000 and our 200? Is that how that would work?
That's something that, again, when we get closer to deciding on that, we can make that decision. Our hope is that there is 50,000 in contingency. We would like to be able to say we wouldn't use any of it and we could save that 50,000. But we don't know the weather. We don't know a lot of things. So I tend not to advertise that as or promote it. But before we go and sign and before we agree on everything, savings along those lines should be dealt with, and how we deal with that. Just as well, I've and in these numbers, I've tried extremely hard to find all the expenses that could show up. We've gone over a lot of different items, so I can't see it going over budget, especially with 50,000 in contingency. But no, I think that's a very good question that we would have to have that well documented before we move forward on if things come in less than expensive, what do we do with that? Who gets the value in that?
I never really thought about the other side of it. Yeah, if things are more expensive. Yeah. I know, and interesting. Yep. Thanks.
Okay, so moving forward, staff's made the recommendation, and that would be where their council's investment would be $200,000 in this project. And I guess maybe I'm looking maybe I'm looking at Tina and maybe Ron for an idea for the wording of what, because we'll just do a verbal motion, obviously, for this. But what an appropriate wording for a motion could be, should one want to make the motion to go forward on the recommendation. If it's just the $200,000, do we have to direct staff then to continue the discussion, or does that go without saying?
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think what you could do is use the wording something to the effect that the council accept the recommendation of the Public Works Manager with regards to a maximum council contribution of $200,000 towards the Nagle Drive water main extension project.
Okay. And would there have to be anything in there with regards to the continuing conversation and decisions that have to be made on this project, or no?
At this point, all that recommendation would do is to set the maximum contribution should this project go forward. So
okay, very good. Okay, so if everybody's clear on that, either I need somebody to make that motion or not make that motion or make a different motion. Councillor Regan, are you making that motion?
Make that motion, yes.
Okay.
I'd like to make that motion, please.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Westman.
Yep.
Any discussion, any further discussion, comments? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So just to confirm, the next steps will obviously be that staff will communicate that back to the residents, and then obviously we know what their potential options are going forward, and we'll look for more communication, and hopefully by the time we have our next council meeting, we can come to a firm decision on this project. Okay, and I do want to echo, and I think this is a good point to do this. I want to echo the comments that Councillor Reagan made about staff's involvement. Julie, Jeff, and going back to our previous Public Works Manager, Dave Kester, this has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of work put into it. I know that we aren't at the finish line yet, but I do want to congratulate and thank the staff for all the work that they have put into it. I know that the residents have been well served. I've gotten a lot of positive comments from residents about the communication that has happened between staff and the residents. So thank you for that. And then just to the residents, you know, this hasn't been easy getting this information, and certainly it wasn't the information that we wanted to have to pass along to them. But you know, let's try to work through this together so that we can come to a reasonable solution. So, okay, anything else, Jeff?
No, I'm done.
Okay, you're off the hook now. Okay, Parks and Rec, Paul.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I begin with the soccer field strategy. It's the big one. I'm not going to read over the whole report as it was deferred from last meeting, but instead I would like, in fairness, to address some of the comments and concerns brought up by Mr. Haskett and Mr. Gould at the previous meeting, as I was not there to clarify them due to my son's last-minute trip to the hospital. So for that, I'd like to kind of start from the beginning. There's been several meetings on this subject. The first of which was between staff, the neighboring developers, and the Soccer Association, where a proposed plan was presented by the developers and representatives of the Soccer Association and shown as an immediate solution to the development of the top field. Before discussing any proposals or plans, it was felt it was important to get the committed direction from the Soccer Association on their actual immediate needs and to present it to those needs to the PRAC committee for discussion on direction before discussing any proposed plans. At the PRAC meeting, there was a lengthy discussion on this subject, And the key factors that were mentioned were that they were not in favor of making recommendation to look at land proposals or budgets, as there was much uncertainty to the funding for phase 2 at the time. They would much more prefer a solution that utilizes land that we currently had at no cost, or to utilize nearby fields in neighboring municipalities. The final recommendation, after much discussion, was that the direction was to meet with soccer and to come up with a cost-effective short-term solution to address the immediate needs, as well as research a long-term plan that could address the needs of both soccer and minor ball and their growth. A big factor that was also mentioned at that point was that they were in favor of a solution that would be a 20-year solution, and that was kind of how they were looking at if we had to spend money. The next meeting was between the Soccer Association representatives, staff, Councillor Masterakos, Councillor Regan. This meeting was to discuss any proposed short-term solutions and if they would be feasible to meet soccer's immediate needs. The Soccer Association again presented the proposal presented at the first meeting, as they felt that the time frame was falling short, and if we did not begin this work immediately, we would miss the window to develop a field and have it ready for the time the development took over the top field. The association also agreed to meet and look at sites in the township, as well as nearby fields and neighboring municipalities, to see if they would be appropriate to meet the needs and result in a cost-effective plan. The result of the field meeting determined that nearby fields would not be appropriate for the larger field needs, and that a smaller size field could be developed in Granton to open up some of the time slots across the larger fields. But unless we were to reconfigure space behind the arena to facilitate their needs, once the 2021 season begins, we would not be able to run a full soccer program. Since that meeting, Mr. Gould and myself met with TDS to discuss possible costs, scope of work, and timeline. After that meeting, it was discussed internally with staff that a lot would be depending on grading and drainage control, as well as site plan for the neighboring development. Therefore, before bringing the project to PRAC and/or council, this memo's intention was to hire Dillon's Consulting, who is doing the survey and planning for the neighboring development, to do a site plan and grading plan of the proposed reconfiguration, so that a proper budget can be determined for consideration when the actual project was to come forward for consideration. It's important to note as well that currently there's much uncertainty in spring summer recreation programs and sport, and what will be happening with the closure of park amenities and restriction to gathering size. As well, it's important to note that prohibition to new construction projects indefinitely until further notice could also be an issue in regards to this. I think it's also important to note that some of that money that the Soccer Association had put aside for field development or new nets or whichever, they may be at risk of losing that, because if they have to do a full refund, many of these sports associations pay online services for registration, and there is a fee associated with refunds and also to process payments. So they're negotiating those funds, but they may be out of luck. So they may actually have to take a big loss if they have to cancel this season.
Okay, so, all right, discussion on the soccer fields. So your recommendation, let me get this straight, Paul, is to develop the tender documentation, right? But we're not going to, your recommendation isn't to put it forward yet, right?
The recommendation is at first to proceed with hiring Dillon's Consultant to do the survey planning. And so that way we can determine a proper budget to even to start discussing this project. Because if the proposal comes back saying that the work's astronomically larger than we've estimated, it'd be a completely different conversation.
Okay, all right, okay. Ron, did you have a comment?
There. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the one important part is, and I agree with Mr. Smith here, I think with the development of the Van Giel lands where the existing upper field is, I think that is going to be proceeding forward. And we want to make sure that whatever lot grading they do on their lands don't don't jeopardize or preclude the development of that extra soccer field that's sort of on paper as a proposal from Lincoln Minor Soccer. So I'm very much in support of that recommendation.
Okay, any questions or comments from council on this? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just Paul, did you have any sense on when they can come out to do that work, or are they, since there's no, there's some, so is that on hold right now even for Dylan to come out? Is that what you said? And then basically, I guess, will you be letting them know to hopefully you're in the queue when things come back open? Is that the plan, I guess?
Well, we are already setting up meetings to meet discussing development, not the soccer field. But I believe any surveying work could still be done at this point, just not actual dedicated construction is not allowed to start. I believe that's.
If this gets passed, and you'll proceed to get that started, the surveying and that.
Yeah.
Okay. And get it for budgetary purposes for the next. Yeah. Well, makes sense. Good.
I think it's important to note there's a lot of unknowns right now. So time-wise, we just don't know right now, especially if everything's going on in the world.
Okay.
Okay, if there are not any more comments, Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Paul, I'm just wondering, with the restrictions that we have, and I know they wanted to get starting, if we're going to do the field, they're talking about it getting ready for next season. And I'm just wondering with those restrictions and maybe not being able to get there, if we go forward with that, what are the chances of it actually being ready for next season? And do we have a contingency plan for kids to play soccer if we don't have that field ready? Because if you can't get on there until September or October, it may not be ready till next year, right?
That's correct. I think we might have to make do, but it also, the development of that top soccer field may also fall under the same restrictions right now. So it may gain us more time. I think it's important, well, we have staff working, we're working on field maintenance at the moment anyways, that maybe we try and see what we can do with the existing fields to make them larger. And at that point, it may just come down to just facilitating booking differently. If it might
Scheduling, yeah.
Yeah, it may be tight, it may not be perfect, but it might work.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions or comments with regards to this, there is a recommendation from staff, and I would just need a mover and seconder for that, one way or the other. Councillor Masterakis is moving the recommendation, and Councillor Regan is seconding it. And all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, anything else, Paul?
Yeah, I would just like to take this moment to just reach out to everyone and say I very much appreciate everyone's efforts in during this difficult time. To residents, I appreciate the understanding for the closing of park amenities. I know it's been difficult for some, but it's, if you can keep it up and just, sometimes you have to remind yourself you're not on summer vacation and it's not time to organize a ball game or go to the park together in big groups for football. It's very important what we're doing, and if we can keep it up, it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, I think that is well warranted, Paul. Thank you very much. Any questions for Paul besides what he has reported to us? Okay, economic development, any updates there?
Sure. I just want to let everyone know there's going to be a newsletter that'll go out tomorrow, another community update on the COVID crisis. And within that newsletter will be the information on an email address we've created. We're kind of tagging it as a information line, not call to complain or email us to complain line. It's going to be more based on, oh, if you're looking for information on services or programs or closures, or if you have concerns, then feel free to email us at this particular email address. It'll be covid19@lucanbadolph.on.ca. Ron and I will moderate those emails coming in. So within that newsletter is going to be the email, an update from the OPP of what they can and cannot do. I got them to email me specifically what they would like, because I know there's a lot of confusion between their roles in this, and then reminding people that we will have bylaw officers kind of just patrolling around some of our facilities to make sure people are not using them. And like I said, we're going to focus more on the education part versus, you know, giving out tickets and enforcement and those sort of things. And then I'll also have some information on, you know, important websites to visit economically, and you know, if people want updates from the health unit, those sort of things. So, and updates on what things in the upcoming have been postponed or canceled, kind of community events. So that'll be going out tomorrow, and so residents should get that in the next day or two, and it'll be online as well.
Any questions or anything for Lisa? Just on that note, just to piggyback off of what Lisa said about starting the information email, I believe Tim Center is doing the same thing. And I imagine maybe that might be more of an update from the other municipalities on your call tomorrow, Ron, with the other CAOs. But Middlesex County has on their website, they've created a whole COVID section, and they've collated all of the information that's come with the programs that are being rolled out from the feds and the province. So it's a great resource, and I know that Lisa's been doing a great job of doing that as well. But from the county standpoint, you know, again, it's that thing, why reinvent the wheel? So they've got everything there, and yeah, it's just more information for our residents to help get them through a mound of red tape and bureaucracy, and to help them try and get through the situation in front of us. Paul.
There we go. If I may, Madam Mayor, that Lisa's comment also just reminded me, after our emergency management meeting on Friday, Lisa and myself had a quick phone call, and we're thinking of maybe developing some sort of outreach program that people could sign up for. Maybe just like a phone check-in program that maybe, and as well as through Parks and Rec Ontario, they're wanting us to kind of look at virtual programming that we could do, kind of, so people still have something, some sort of connection. And Abby has been doing a fantastic job at creating a weekly kind of things to do at home with your kids online. So we're really thinking of trying to develop that so that we're still providing some sort of service, even though they can't physically come here and do it.
No, there's lots of great resources out there, Paul, and I'm glad you brought up what Abby's doing, because I mean, it's another tool in the toolbox for parents. The library is doing a number of different programming, virtual things, as well as early on. So for parents out there, I mean, it's challenging, no question, but there's certainly lots of local initiatives out there to help get through this. So thanks for that. Okay, any comments from council at this time? Councillor comments. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, it's very quick. So I've noticed that the vast majority of people in our community are following the rules and going along, following the recommendations of the Middlesex Health Unit and the Ontario and federal government. There are some people in our community, though, that aren't. And I've been calling them on that behavior, and I'm challenging people in the community and on council to, if you see this behavior, you need to call it, because we're in this together, and those kinds of behaviors aren't helping. So I'm taking a stand on it and saying, I'll call you out on it if I have to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from councillors? Dave, Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just wondering if staff, before obviously COVID-19, has had any communication with the development regarding the car wash. And if they haven't, if they could, for the next meeting, actually, if you don't mind, to see if you can get a comment on when we come out of this, what the intent is. So
There you
Ron?
go. Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you for that question, Deputy Mayor. We have not had any contact with the owner of the proposed car wash. So if council wishes, I can follow up with him and find out where we're at, what the status is, and hopefully I can
get an update.
Get an update for you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments from councillors? Okay, seeing none. Okay, Tina, so we don't have any motions, correct? It's just the
Correct, just the
bylaws.
bylaw and the adjournment, because the other two motions were on the.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak to any of these bylaws? Just a reminder that we're updating the fees bylaw because we deferred the increase on our water and sewer rates. And then I think the road assumption, did we speak to that at our last council meeting for some?
I'll ask Jeff to maybe comment on that. That's the road assumption bylaw for Ridge Crossing, Jeff.
Yes, so this stems back actually to Dave also. We've been in the process of doing the final assumption on 1B of the Ridge Crossing subdivision. So all the so-called ticks in the box have been ticked off with the developer. We're satisfied with the condition of all the infrastructure in there. And so at this point, we can assume it and it becomes part of our infrastructure, so.
Okay, great. Okay, so with that, I'll move on then to the motion, the bylaws in front of us. So that resolved that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 13-2020 Road Assumption Bylaw, Ridge Crossing Phase 1B, 14-2020 the Fees Bylaw, and 15-2020 the Confirming Bylaw. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Westman and Councillor Reagan. And all in favor? And that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:24 p.m. Mover and seconder for that. Dave and Alex, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for attending our Zoom YouTube meeting. I hope that anybody watching us got something out of it. I'm glad everybody's able to bear with us. I think the technology actually didn't, it worked quite well. So I would imagine that we'll be doing this in 2 weeks. Just a reminder to wash your hands, stay safe, stay healthy, stay 2 meters apart, and stay home. Have a great holiday weekend, everybody. Good night.